Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of the Unlaced podcast. We've been really enjoying the last few episodes. All the subscribers out there, can't thank you enough for all your input and support. Today's a very special one, as we've spoken of in the past. Very passionate about female sport and where female sport is going. Particularly AFLW is one area, obviously more notable from a national perspective, that's getting some real limelight and has just finished out the season. So timely enough, we've got one of the business moguls of the female sporting world in Alexandra Saundry. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Jake. It'll be, a bit of fun today. So
Yeah. No, pleasure. Now, you've got a pretty unique story, which we are going to go into of how you are, played in the initial AFLW when it started and made a move into, female sports management company and the management side of the game, which is always a fascinating, angle on sport that I don't really know enough about. Obviously, I wasn't really a manager myself, but I do want to get to this season that's just gone by. I mean, what'd you make of it?
Oh, I just think we're seeing the competition go from strength to strength every year, and it's really exciting to see these youngsters come through and really have an impact straight away at the competition. But even the likes on the weekend of Isabella Dawes, we've got Courtney Hodder and girls like that are just coming in and making immediate impacts for the Brisbane Lions. And it's crazy. And girls coming from other sports that probably haven't been given the opportunity to be on the big stage like AFLW. And I think it's just really cool to see different people's stories and their backgrounds and how they've evolved to become part of this, amazing competition.
Did you ever think going from, obviously we're going to when you were drafted into or sort of became part of the GWS Giants in season 1, but did you ever think it would get to this point of like having 25,000 people at Adelaide Oval grand final like the way it was?
Oh, I don't think so. Particularly round 1, the lockout game was, a bigger shock enough. So after that, I think there was a shift in probably my mentality around, well, we're really here and we're here to, do something special. And whatever capacity anyone brought to that, it was really great to see, like, Adelaide Oval last time they played a grand final there, the numbers, I think it was 32,000 last time. Massive. So the numbers, again, it's just sensational to see the continuation of that, even though the tickets are paid for now. I think the argument's gone away from people just go because it's free. So I think that's really cool.
And it was such a good advertisement of the female game as well, the grand final. Like, it was an electric game. I mean, Brisbane Lions were phenomenal. And you mentioned her name, Courtney Hodder, before. Like, some of the goals she was kicking was just out of this, Eddie Betts-like.
Oh, absolutely. Very exciting.
So many super talented females, and they was finally, getting some of the limelight that they deserve. And it was a massive win for the Brisbane Lions. Obviously, Adelaide Crows have been immense since the inception of the league. I guess we touched on the development from season 1 to now from, crowd perspective, but just from the actual brand of football. I mean, you're seeing sort of the skill sets of the girls and the actual quality of players coming through, just, advance even more?
I think it's just booming, Jake. Like, it's in terms of when you look at the contracted players at the moment, a normal way to contract players would their peak of the career is probably about 27, 28-ish in the men's, and girls are coming in now at the age of 19 or 20 and probably being some of the highest paid players on the list because they are the best talent. Yeah. So clubs are needing to retain that talent for longer periods of time. So I think the evolution of that's going to be really interesting across the next 3 to 5 years, particularly the likes of Madison Press-Parker, who takes out a League BNF at 19 years of age. It's just crazy. Yeah. And her sister is coming in this year for this year's draft, Georgie Press-Parkinson. She was winning league best and fairest 2 years ago when she's crazy. 16 years old. So it's just baffling to see the impact these girls are having, but they're having an impact because their skill set's so much higher. So they look like they've got more time, but in reality, they're just more coordinated potentially, and they can kick on both sides of their foot, so they're just more eloquent in the way they go about it. Yeah,
that's true. Well, I don't know if that was a slight stab at you and I, because technically we should be in the peak of our powers now, but we don't play it anymore. So, no, but it is. I mean, some of the youngsters you mentioned, some of Madison Press-Packers, I'm a Saints fan, so I'm a massive fan of Georgia Patrikios. I mean, she's a superstar. She probably should win the best and fairest as well, but just going from when you played in the inaugural AFLW season, I mean, what was that like? I guess it would have been foreign territory for female sport in this country, particularly AFL. Can you give us a bit of background of what that time was like for you?
I felt just really grateful to be there, to be honest. And I think that mentality is really shifted now, and I'm happy it's shifted. But at that point in time, I was just fortunate to get a spot on the list. When I was 18 years old, coming out of sport, I'd kind of quit. I thought that was it. There was no pathway, and when the whisper of AFLW came around, I started to apply myself a bit more, and I was just grateful to be given the opportunity with the Giants. Great club, great family club, great community, and to be invested in such a great program that was still growing as well. And football's growing in Sydney and New South Wales, so it was really cool. But the feeling of when I ran out against Adelaide in the first round of the first season, it was just like, yeah, how cool is it to be here? And it was a bit surreal, to be honest. And that's probably, I remember, I was playing on the likes of Erin Phillips, and at the point in time, nobody really knew who Erin Phillips was. And now she's an absolute household name and, multiple best and fairest winner and the like. But it's, baffling to think you're on those players not knowing who they were. And you really embarrass yourself being on those players. But I was just grateful to be part of it. And I didn't play the second season due to injury, but, I had probably enjoyed my time a lot more in the second season because you felt part of something.
Yeah.
And I think that's why footy and team sport's so infectious, because the camaraderie and the belonging you get from a big team sport is incredible.
No, I agree. You grew up in Victoria, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So, I mean, particularly with me, when I was playing sport, because I think up until 13, there was probably always a girl on my team playing with the boys, and they'd always be as good, if not better. But it always seemed like from a female point of view, it would get to a sort of a certain point, and there was really no pathway to really go beyond. Obviously, to play at a professional standpoint. So obviously the interest might have fizzled out for some girls, particularly in the contact sports like AFL, where there wasn't those professional leagues. I mean, did you ever see this being possible as a girl in Victoria that probably played footy? It's obviously so phenomenal now for the younger girls that they can actually shoot for the stars with something because there's a foundation for them to go after.
Yeah, absolutely. I played under 12s at St Bernard's Football Club, and that's just where Dad went to school. So I went and played because my younger brother didn't play, and I was like, I may as well go give it a crack and see if Dad will come watch me on the weekends. And played under 12s, then couldn't play again and didn't actually go play the next year because the boys were just so much bigger, and it was kind of scary. So I kind of gave that up, but then moved into another footy program under 18s at the St Kilda Sharks, and then to Melbourne Uni. And there was amazing programs back then. Charlotte Curtis, who, was the head of the female football development at AFL Victoria, she was having academies with the, Essendon Footy Club branding, and, you were part of something, and it's not only just local footy, but there was pathways outside. And I think that's what I loved about it. But it did get to a point where the Women's League, when I was ready to kind of graduate from youth girls, that gave me a lot of a sense of, development and understanding how to get better. You went into the Women's League and that wasn't the case. So I just didn't like it because I played sport to get better, and I played sport to, go to a common goal. But back then girls just played to bash and hit people and, bash and crash football. And I just didn't like that. I liked the skill, the finesse and the learnings around that. So I guess it was the evolution of being one of the younger kids playing. But I loved my time in under 18s, but from 12 till about 14 to 15, I lost a lot of that football in then. I played tennis, I played water polo, I did every sport under the sun at school. I rode for a long period of time, but it was just the huge gap, but also strength and conditioning. You'd play footy on the weekend, but I'd never touched an Olympic barbell. I'd never touched I'd never done a running program until I got to the Giants at age 24, I think I was. So it was the big gap in terms of Madison Press Barker. She's getting programs since she was 15 to 20. So it's it's pretty, it's a big difference.
It's almost like now the son, and imagine the next 5 years, the girls coming through that are doing these, these things from such a younger age. It's completely true. I mean, what's interesting, so you were injured in your second season at the Giants.
Yeah, so I came, I was actually the fittest and strongest I'd ever been at playing, and I think I'm notoriously an overtrainer, so I was wanting to do everything right, and I kind of got to 2 weeks before the week of the practice match, which was 2 weeks before round one, and I wasn't moving well at training, and the physios were like, "What's going on with you?" And I was like, "Nothing's wrong. Just leave me alone, just let me play, just leave me alone." And they're like, "Nah, something's not right with your leg. You're not running properly." And I was like, "I'm fine. Just leave me alone." I was always like that. And I just wanted to put my head down and do the work and then get off the track.
Yeah.
But they were like, "Nah, you're off the track. Come in." And then they were feeling my leg, and I had really bad pain through my tibia, I think it was, in my leg. And so they sent me off for scans the next day, and I had really bad bone stress and whatnot through my legs. So they were like, "Well, you're going to be 5 weeks off legs, and then you'll be loaded into a 3 to 4 week running program." And back then, that's the end of the season. And You're kind of like, cool, I've just moved my life. I've, made work keep me on full time up in Sydney. I'm paying ridiculous rent in Sydney for a stupid contract, that is $13,000 back then. You're like, God, I'm just another year back now. So
yeah,
for me, I think the writing was on the wall when the season got, closer to the end, that I did have to give it up if I wanted to pursue the career that I wanted. I had a really great boss at the time that let me go and do it. But, if the whole office is in Melbourne and I'm the only one in Sydney, that does strain the relationship of work a lot. So I was always very work focused, and having footy, I think, gave me a lot of perspective and a lot of learnings as an individual. But
definitely,
I couldn't grow in the other aspect of my life that I wanted to grow in.
Do you reckon that's a common challenge? I mean, I don't know from where the game's from there, but obviously it's progressed a lot. But do females within the AFLW still have some of those challenges? Obviously balancing trying to be the best at AFLW, but probably not having the financial stability to be fully, I guess, giving themselves to that sport, because there's obviously it's shorter seasons, and they've obviously got to work outside of it for some of them too. So
yeah, I just think it's baffling that the competition's probably still at this point in terms of girls at the contract rate they're on. There's some girls that are really fortunate to be paid really good money for it, for how many games they play. But we've got girls that are studying to be lawyers, doctors, and if you want to be a lawyer, and you can't. It's not physically possible. Like I've got friends that are lawyers, and they're at work till 9 p.m. 10 p.m. every single night. It's like you can't play local footy if you're doing those kind of jobs, and like being a doctor or anything like that. So I think it's really challenging. But like the teachers even find it hard. They've got they finish at 3:30 and they might be able to get to training, but they've still got to get up really early. Or the tradies that have got to be up at 5:30 every morning, or girls that are travelling an hour and a half, 2 hours to work every day. It's just not conducive to where that they want to take the competition right now. And I'm really lucky to manage some really amazing players and people that are trying to make a difference in that space. But right now, the competition is in a bit of it's in a really weird spot where you either go more full time and the girls jeopardise their careers more, or how do you find that balance? And I think that's a huge part of my role with those girls in terms of helping them find that balance. And it's important for them, particularly life after sport, like we spoke about before, that they need to have something that they're striving towards, even if they're ticking it off, inches at a time. It's something they need to have outside of that. They're not fortunate like the boys to have full-time contracts and security in what they're doing. We don't even know when the competition's going to start this year.
Right.
And when pre-season's going to start. So if that, we don't know when sign and trade is, and there's all these things that are up in the air that continuously get pushed back, and it directly impacts the girls' jobs, life outside and employment. But not only that, it's the girls that don't know if they're going to get a contract. The anxiety is huge.
Yeah. How do you balance like being a manager for the AFL player, that you obviously want them to succeed on the field and do as much as they can, but then also the realization that some of these girls actually have to have other support mechanisms in place, whether that's study or work, to keep themselves going, because obviously the women's game's at a certain point right now where they can't go all in. How do you balance that from your perspective?
I think you balance it in the best way possible in terms of like probably putting the money aspect into really black and white. If they want to earn as much as they can in football, well, they're going to have to also invest money into their careers outside of that in the 6-month time that they're not at the club. So they have to earn some additional money compared to their football contract. So you try to sell it in a way that they need to educate themselves, but they also need to go towards something. And that might be a part-time job at Rebel Sport or, a different job at a cafe. It's just something. But I'm a big advocate for that because it actually distracts them from the football world.
Yeah, definitely.
And it takes their mind off it. And it gives them perspective of what life is as well, and not getting caught up in a part-time job that is football at the moment, that girls think it is full-time, and it's, no, you're not getting paid full-time to do it. I love the passion and I love the enthusiasm and I love the drive to get better. But the actual crux of it, it's not paying you enough to actually have a life that you can move out of home, save for a house, or, save to just do life normally. Yeah. So I think the strain of that, you try to put it in perspective. And like I do a lot of goal setting with my clients and how we can set goals off the field but on the field, and actually to separate them, not make them one goal-setting exercise where your life all of a sudden becomes football. Football is a part of you. It's not your whole life, and demonstrating that to some of the girls coming through is challenging. But I think, we're in great stead to be able to help the girls and educate the girls in a way that it is just part of them. It doesn't define them and it doesn't define who they are, but you want them to have the drive to get better. Because at the end of the day, if they're going to get better, they're going to get a better contract and then they're going to be happy, and that's what it drives it at the end of the day. They need to enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there without obviously going into the depth of financials of anyone, but is there players that can sort of see them, like, I guess their contracts reflect a full-time sort of operation and player that they can do, and then there's some that don't. Is there still a sort of imbalance, or is it?
Absolutely. I think there's some, there's a handful of players within the comp that could comfortably sit back and play the 9 games and be completely paid full-time, really good full-time wage. But then there's some that, probably the hardest workers, and they don't actually get paid or remunerated anywhere near it. I've got one girl that, did her knee last year, and she was the first one going, Alex, who can I get to, I'll pay them. How do I get my knee better? I want to play round 1 next year. And, she's putting thousands of dollars away each month to just get a person that's actually going to be there for her to do the training with her and through her ACL rehabilitation. And it's kind of like, to me, she played round 1. She was traded. She played round 1, and her story was, for me, I was like, that's amazing to see an athlete with so much drive that they're not going, I only get paid $15,000. I've got to invest $3,000 into that. That's a huge chunk of that. They're thinking, I play footy because I love it and I want to get back out there. And they're the people you want to manage, because
definitely,
if it doesn't have too much driving on the money side of things, when the money doesn't come, it's not going to be as detrimental to them. They deserve to get paid as much as we can, and as a manager, you want them to get paid as much as you can for as long as you can, but you also want them to have perspective on why they play as well.
Yeah. So for you, working with the range of your athletes, do most of them work as well? I mean, are most of them working or studying to balance? I mean, all?
I'd say all of them have at least got a job. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow,
even if it's at the club or whatnot, I would say every single player has a job. Yeah.
Do you see the sort of, do you see the sort of in the near future, us being able to close that gap from, I guess, the highest paid to the lowest paid and making it more consistent across the league to reflect, obviously, the talent we're seeing is just phenomenal? Yeah.
I hope so. I hope it gets to a point where we are able to not have a tiering system with AFLW and the girls get remunerated accordingly, similar to W League. Like, a lot of clubs just go, well, we'll pay you base wage and that's it. And the girls go, well, I'm not going to get much more if I move to another club, and that means uprooting my life. Like, how do I justify, being one of the best players in the team, being on young Matilda's list and being paid base payment?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It just doesn't make sense. And I think the FFA are doing everything they can and the PFA to do that, but it's similar to where AFLW is at the moment. It's kind of going, we need to see some change or just some plans. It doesn't need to happen right now, but can we just have some understanding of what's ahead instead of every year going, well, it costs us $1.5 million each round. Yeah, well, great. It does cost you that. So how are you going to help sustain that, and where are you going to make different inroads to actually help the girls increase their contract value? Because they'll do the work. The girls will do the work. We know that. Like a season like Darcy Vestio has had, she invests a lot of time and money into her performance over the past 12 months, and she's, reaped the rewards of that All-Australian nomination, leading goal kicker. Like, she's having a great season. She's no injuries through the preseason and whatnot. So I think we'll get there, but it's going to take, unless the AFL can give the girls some sort of plan. Yeah. And probably the PFA to that degree, you're going to lose girls. You're going to lose girls to the competition, which will be disappointing.
Yeah, I think so too, because it's almost like at least you get visibility of the investment and the time and effort you're giving is going to pay off, if not for you, for the girls down the line. Whereas if there's sort of that greyness, it's like, well, at some point you're going to make a decision. Is this 9 weeks sort of contract and payment serving me for what I could be doing elsewhere? And you're right, that could be a decision some girls would have to make. And I'm sure, like yourself, you had to make when you were sort of transitioning out of GWS, which kind of leads me to my next question around, I guess, your move into management, because I know you obviously have your own female sports management company now, but you did work with Paul Connors and sort of at Connors Sports in a management capacity there too. So can you explain to us how you ended up in this world?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a stickler for a plan. So when I left school, I knew what I wanted to do and I knew where I wanted to be, and I wanted to get an internship with Paul Connors. So I finished.
What made you? What was what like?
He was just the one in the media all the time that looked like he was the mover and shaker of the industry.
Gold,
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I just think he had a small business as well. It wasn't a really, when you looked at it, it wasn't some commercial big really commercial big dog that would have sacrificed his player's career to make a buck. And I think that's where I really resonated with Paul. He really genuinely cared about the players. And I just remember over those 5 years from when I left school to getting the job, I did everything I could. I went and worked in what is now the NAB League. I went and worked at the Calder Cannons, sat under Marty Allison, who was the head coach of the under-18s men's at the time, and just understood the pathways and understood what it took to do, player management. I worked in an accounting firm with a base wage. I think it was $11 or $12, per hour. And I did that one day a week because I knew it was going to hold me in good stead to have office experience and et cetera, et cetera. So there was things I did along the way that maybe, I didn't have the savings I wanted to after 5 years, but I got the job after 5 years. And I walked into, I sent Paul an email and his wife, Kirsty, and I just said, look, I'd love to have the opportunity to do an internship with you guys. And they went, yeah, no worries, come in for an interview. We'll see what what it's like. And I sat there and they're like, Paul's like, oh, yeah, love your resume, and ticked. And he's notorious for getting his pen out and scribbling over everything. So he's like, yeah, tick, 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 all good. And I was like, okay, yeah, like erratic. And I was just like sitting there and he goes, oh, the internship, no worries, Al, that's all good. But if you impress us enough, there's a job at the end. And I was like, what? And I was a bit like, okay, sure, no worries. And yeah, one thing led to another, and I finished the internship and went part-time because I was coordinating the rowing program at where I went to school. And
how old are you at this point?
I think I was 22.
Okay, so 20, pretty much when you came out of high school,
21. I was 21.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 21. I was at university, and then I knew the last year in my degree I needed to do an internship, and I wanted to align that with Paul.
Okay,
and then I wanted to hopefully transition out to a job, which not everyone gets a Cinderella story, but I did. So, wow. So I was really lucky.
So when you were sort of that, like you identified Paul Connors as someone, you always had wanted to be in this sports management space? Like,
yeah,
that
since
was
year 12. Yeah.
Wow. What prompted that? Just like...
I love sport.
Yeah.
I love people. I love creating relationships, and I loved, or notoriously probably always loved Nike and wanted to work at Nike and the commercial endorsements and what it took for that. So I kind of combined them all and said, oh, this would be a really cool job. And I kind of went, sweet, let's just go for that. And I loved, one of my strengths, I think, was, connecting with people and networking with people. And I just had a genuine care and a sense for people. And that's, something that I've wanted to take into my business as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess doing that, I landed the job with Paul, and I was really lucky to get that job, to be honest. Like, he had so many people come through for internships and work experience and stuff that, the school helped where I went, but, it was the experience that I had with, the head coach of the NAB League at the time. I had him as my reference, and I had other referees that, he was like, how did you get in a program like that? And why are you doing that? Like, you're in an accounting firm, and he had a background in finance and accounting, which I knew part of the reason I went and got the part-time job.
Wow.
So it was kind of all lined up and thought out.
Right?
Yeah, it's calculated, better word. So, it was calculated, and I had to do it to get the job because I knew how competitive it was, and it's even more competitive now.
I can imagine. That actually makes you quite even more unique to me, because typically, and I'm obviously not in this space, so I could be wrong, but my experiences with people in sports management, they typically go into it after they're playing sort of a career or they've gone through sport in some way, whereas you're before that sort of sporting aspect, you've gone, no, that's what I want to do. It's usually the other way around. It's when you come out of sport, when you've gone through like, I understand how this works, I can add something to this, then usually people go into it after their career, whereas that's why I find that unique. Yeah, you're like, no, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, well, I've always wanted to do it, and I always loved it, and I think there was a part of me that knew being a player would help in that capacity too, and having a connection with a footy club. So that was another reason why I wanted to play, because I wanted the experience as an athlete and what it took. Obviously on a different scale to the boys, but I guess having that experience now holds me in great stead for what I do right now. And, a lot of parents love that I've had experience within the game. I've moved interstate. I've moved out of home.
Yeah.
I've played on a base wage. I've had the injuries. I've gone through what...
You're relatable to everyone, right?
Exactly. So there's an aspect of that that's relatable. And, I had a great education, and I loved my education, but it was the experience that I went out and outside of university that really held me in good stead, used my network and did all of that. But, I think I, loved what I did at my time at Connors. And, when I got back and, wanted to retire from footy and kind of hung the boots up there, I knew that I wanted to leave and have my own business. And Paul was great in that. I kind of sat down and said, I'm not resigning because then you can activate my non-compete, but it is my intention too. Yeah. And they were fantastic. Yeah, calculated again. And, Paul and Paul Connors and Robbie Durazio, two are still my great mentors. And I talk to them regularly, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity they gave me. And there was probably only one, disappointing factor when I left. I lost Daisy Pearce, who was my first ever AFLW client to the move. But I was fortunate enough that they let me take everything. And, I think along your career, you can get stuck in defining yourself through different mediums and through different people. And I think, understanding that I was kind of my own identity in that transition was really, really cool. And the business is 3 years in May, and I couldn't be proud of what we've, creating and developing. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, that's awesome. We are going to go into your management company in a bit more depth, but just for those that don't know and are hearing the name Paul Connors, just for, I guess, to share to the listeners who aren't aware, Paul Connors is arguably one of the biggest sporting agents and man managers in the country from an AFL and sporting perspective. That's just got an unbelievable bucket list of clients that you would argue that anyone would wish to manage. So he's probably, as you said, the perfect mentor for someone in this space that's wanting to grow and be nurtured, I would imagine. Yeah,
absolutely. He was, he manages the likes of Luke Hodge, still does Nick Natanui, did Chris Judd, just phenomenal talent. And, the King twins now, like just really amazing talent. And they're still probably a boutique agency, but he was always really supportive of what I did. And there was a time where I left where, we didn't talk too much, but, I'd pick up the phone. He messaged me the other day. He messaged me yesterday, actually last night. And, just being able to call him when I need and just have him in my corner has been really, really cool and really great. But he's a big dog in terms of, the contract space with the men.
Right?
He's the goat, with the men. I hate that I say that because his head will get even bigger than it is. But no, I'm just joking. No, he's just everyone wants to be managed by him because he cares.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, as a manager, he knows the metrics. He knows how to get the right matrix for different players, and he knows how to get the money, and he knows the people within the industry. And I think that a lot of people lose sight of connection is key, and understanding. Some people get really jealous on how many players you manage, but if the more players you manage, the more of each list and how building each list and where you're going to fit best. So, there's pros and cons to everything, but I think he does a sensational job. And, I'm very lucky to have him in my corner with his support, wholeheartedly.
Just to go into this space and More Than Management is the brand we're talking about that Alex is the founder of. But you are a bit of a pioneer across the AFLW space, and it's been well documented that you're one of the first sports agents in this space to be full-time and have a full-time professional company operating. I mean, did you kind of see when you were at working with Paul Connors that this would be a market that, I want to be a part of and I want to get on as soon as possible? Yeah,
I think so. I probably wanted to do the transition a year earlier than I did. Okay. And I didn't because of my hesitation with the league and what the league was earning and the like, and I also wanted to play again. So while I was playing, I was able to hide behind Paul because agents shouldn't really play in the game. So, and that was notoriously, I probably got away with it in the first 2 years, given the infancy of the comp.
Yeah,
but I definitely wouldn't be able to get away with it now.
For sure.
And that's why I blame, I was good enough. And no,
that's right.
I'm just kidding.
I would have been there, but
probably would have won a few brown.
I'd just rather pioneer the female sports management space.
So I guess it's something that I always was really passionate to do. But when I was at Paul's, I'm always notoriously someone that can't just do one thing. So when I was at Connors and just doing men's AFL, I was like, no, I'm going to start bringing in female talent. And then outside of that, I wanted to start doing other sports because I knew I could lend a hand and increase and add value to people's lives outside of AFLW. So I guess that's why for More Than Management, we've gone into different spaces and different sports. And I love that because I think it creates a great diversity across the talent list. But, I have the goal one day of not only being the best female agent in Australia, but let alone the world. I want to create the best agency that's renowned that's renowned for, their care for players and their ability to get stuff done for players in the way they want it to be done. So that's my hopes and dreams for More Than Management. But right now we're 3 years next month, and
that's crazy.
I've got one guy that works under me full time, and then I've got another lady in Brisbane that works for me a couple of days a week, and we transition into different sports because I've got multiple passions in different sports. But I just see so many girls getting taken advantage of from other agents too that I'm just like, I'll manage you, don't worry about it, it's all good, I'll get it done, how do you want it done and whatnot, which sounds a bit vague, but it is true. There's some people that just take advantage and will sign 50 players that are the bottom wage placed on each list, and they take their 4 to 6% and say, I'll see you in 12 months, and it's like, God, you just can't do that anymore. No. And people want to understand what value they're getting from the relationship, and that's why I call the business More Than Management, because I want to be more than just a manager.
It's a great name.
Yeah.
It is a great name. Shout out. No, but so when you were at Connor Sports, were you sort of knocking on the door saying, hey, we need to get girls as part of this because it's gonna evolve? Were you one of the people that was sort of knocking that down?
Yeah, I went and sat in Paul's office. I vividly remember it being like, Paul, this is going to be a thing. We need to be on the forefront of it. Like, and I remember telling him, like, this is Daisy, this is the, the poster girl for AFLW. We need to talk with her. We need to do this. And he's like, why? He's like, why? You tell me why. And I said, well, first of all, it's a great, corporate social responsibility. So I tried to sell it in a real business way. It's going to look really good on the business if we start to build equality across the, the list that we've got and create a great environment for both genders. And I said, well, what about, for example, Jaden Stevenson, who they manage, his sister's a really talented sports person. So I said, when you're pitching to players, it's really attractive that, you're supporting the next gen. You've got the family then. So he was like, oh, yep, okay, all good. Let's set up a meeting. And I was like,
how good's that? What a pitch.
Yeah, what a pitch. I'm in. So
I nailed it.
Then, I remember that I'd texted Daisy and she hadn't replied. And then I was like, I was in the car one day on the way to get lunch for work, like at lunch break. And I was like, just call. No, just call. No, I'm not calling. Just call. And I pressed it and then she answered and then she came in 3 days later and we signed her a week later.
Wow.
And, I was really proud of what I did with her. We negotiated a contract with SEN for 2-3 years and, a Channel 7 big deal. And I was really proud of her Swiss deal and NAB deal. I did all of that by myself. And
that's crazy.
I was really proud of what we were able to evolve for her. And, she's a stellar person and stellar human and still doing great things in the community.
Well, as part of your, I guess, transition out of Connors and into modern management, you mentioned, like, you obviously were fortunate enough to take some of your stock that you probably were pivotal in bringing on. And some of the names you have is just out of this world in this sport. So we mentioned a couple. Taylor Harris, Darcy Vescia, Katie Brennan. We touched on Madison Prespakis before. I mean, you've got some of the bolters in this game, which is just awesome to see. But, I mean, how did you get so much talent? I mean, do you identify the players? Do you have an eye for talent? Like, what is it that sort of makes you?
I think that during my 5 years off footy, I went and coached under 18s Vic Country and Vic Metro, and I met a lot of players through there. So I met Maddie Prespakis, I met Izzy Huntington, I met Catherine Smith, I met all these great players. So when I was going to pitch for them, I already knew them and I already knew the family. So I was able to sit down there and there was already an element of trust, which was really cool. And being able to kind of pitch for them. I remember Isabel Huntington went pick 1 in the second AFLW draft, and then that night I drove to Saundry and pitched to Maddie Prespakis. And then 3 days later I texted her and she's like, "Yeah, I'm in." And I'm like, what is going on?
Wow.
So I think the evolution of it, I used my network really well and I used the people that, I trusted and they trusted me to build that foundation. And I think that's in any management capacity. You've got to have trust and relationships with the family to be able to manage the talent. So I think that evolution, obviously, then, Maddie Prespakis was best friends with Georgia Patricio, so I got the introduction there. And then you kind of can get little introductions from different people, but you've still got to pitch for them. And I'm a big believer in under-promise and over-deliver, but a lot of agents over-promise and under-deliver.
It's a big decision for any athlete. I mean, it's a massive decision because obviously there's a huge part of sport that when you get to the professional level, it is a business.
Yeah.
And you do need support. You need knowledge and intelligence around you to help you navigate through it because you can't go through it alone.
No, absolutely. And I think that's where a lot of people get blindsided by a lot of families and girls particularly get blindsided by the big agencies that have heaps of male players. And I'm like, you're not getting it. They're totally different contracts in totally different leagues that you are worlds apart. And the care and genuine, the genuine care from agents that have huge male lists, it's minimal because the money, in a business sense, the money they earn from a girl compared to a boy, how much time are they really going to spend on that girl?
Correct.
So that's why I wanted to create the business because I actually had clear air to go and do what I wanted because these girls deserve a manager in any sport, netball, W League, football, rugby, whatever it is. They deserve a manager that's going to look after them like they're full-time athletes.
Yeah.
And that's where I guess my passion comes from, being like they deserve the top level service. And to be honest, unarrogantly, I probably provide a better service to the girls that, are part-time athletes and some of the male managers do to full-time athletes.
For sure.
So,
yeah.
And that's, and that's just something that I'm really proud of and something that I've built and something that I just think they're deserving of.
Are you at a point now where you've obviously got a super starred line foundation of players that you're more selective of who you bring on? I guess there would have been a component of you want to get the best on and get as many on as you can to obviously promote your business. But now you're obviously in a position where you're full time. You just mentioned off air that you're looking to get some offices around the corner from where we are now. Like, do you have sort of that scouting lens of like we're only going to be specific with who we get on board, or how do you approach, I guess?
Yeah, AFLW is really unique because at contract time, I reckon I get 15 calls from girls freaking out about their contract and wanting me to do their contract.
Right.
And I just I'm I'm at capacity. Like, I don't want to just take on talent to just clip, as you said, clip the ticket and go.
Yeah.
I want to take on talent that I really want to be a part of their entire journey.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's always so important that I manage them from a really young age. So you set the standards and set the tone then.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a part of me that kind of goes, I want to help everyone. And it's something that I've really spoken to the AFLPA about, being like, you need to provide a service for these girls that are out of contract and, on bottom tier wages, that, you need to help support them or help support us to support them. And how do we do that in a really time effective way? And there's some girls that I've helped along the way because of, I played footy with them back in the day or whatnot. And if any girl's really desperate for a contract, I'll always try and help. I'm probably a sucker that I care so much, and that's probably my biggest downfall sometimes. But I just want to see the league succeed, and I want to see it do really well. And that's why, like, my move into W League and the soccer has been really calculated over the past 2 years, and really selective in who I want to go for. But that league, there's some agents that've got like 100 plus players. And it's just like they've just got them to make the buck, and it's like the girls don't even know what management is. So it's really, in terms of the probably the polar opposites compared to AFLW and W League, there is a lot more agents in AFL than there is in W League.
Yeah, that's crazy. So has it been, because the expansion into other sports, you obviously come from the AFL background and started with the foundation of clients from the AFLW, but you do have a couple of other sports now that you've crossed and entered into. Has that been difficult coming from an AFL background, particularly into, like, for instance, my background in soccer, as we touched on, like, I know the agents in that field and they're sharks. They've been there for a while. I mean, is it competitive for you to kind of then go in and pitch yourself and say, hey, look, I'm new to this territory, but this is what I'm looking at building? Is that tough? Yeah,
it is tough. It definitely is. But I think that, I've got 3 great clients and at the moment, like, we're looking to expand that. But it is tough, particularly because the introduction phase is really hard. And I've got great mentors in Kate Gill, who's, CEO of the PFA, and then Brendan Schwab, who was CEO of the Players Association in FIFA. And they're 2 great mentors for me across it. And they, I always filter what girls are like and how they are, not only in every single sport. I filter them through other people, being like, hey, what do you think of this girl? Is she high maintenance? Is she, after the influencer space, or is she a genuine athlete?
Yeah.
And I think I've been fortunate in that I managed Georgie Yimendale from the Western Sydney Wanderers, and she's a Fox Sport commentator and everything, so she knows the league really well. So when I ask her about a player, she'll be really honest and kind of go, "You definitely shouldn't go after them. They're a brat. Their family's high maintenance. You'll hate it." And I'm like, "Sweet, line through
brutal
it,
honesty.
Brutal honesty, and it's great." But that's how I filter who I can go after and who I should go after. But it is hard, like, there's no rules around the soccer space. So it's sharks are like 14, 15 and you're like, oh my God, why did you sign a 5-year deal at Melbourne Victory and you're getting paid a base wage? Like, what have you done? But yeah, I think it's an interesting space that you've just got to, like, I've really grown my network over the past 2 years, and it's exactly what I did. I had multiple conversations with players that had managers, and I just said, I don't want to manage you. I'm not here to take you from your management, but I'd love to sit down with you to understand what's great in the space, but what's missing. And I built that over 2 years. So after I had the business for a year, I then went into that phase of looking into W League. But yeah, it's not something I've never gone into a sport without doing my due diligence before that. Yeah. I've just recently got my cricket accreditation, so my ACA accreditation, which was a ridiculous 3-hour exam and studying like bloody bulk of notes. But it was a great experience to do, and I'm just about to get my NRL accreditation. I've just lodged that. So in terms of probably being one of the only females across the country in all those domains, I think I am one of the only ones. And I'm just proud, and I want to, manage people that really genuinely want the right help. I want to manage great athletes that want to be in the game for long periods of time. I don't want to manage people that come in to be an athlete and then on the side be an influencer. Yeah. You can create great change across different sponsorships and everything as an athlete, and I respect that, and I love doing that. But I don't like seeing people come in wanting to be influencers, getting all this free stuff, and then going, I'm going to go play an average game on the weekend. It's like, you need to be the best athlete you can be in the time period you've got, because you'll regret it later.
Exactly. It's so exciting for you, because it's like you are one of the first in this space covering more and more sports, as we've touched on. But you just feel like female sport in this country is starting to take a shift to become obviously more professional across pretty much every code, where they're going to get more recognition and hopefully more balance in what they're getting from a pay perspective too. But just in regards to one thing you do speak on, and I actually do want to understand a bit more around the people aspect, like when you're vetting from the people point of view, why is that so important for you? when it comes to management?
I think that when you're managing someone, you want to somewhat have some aligned values, because I think if you're trying to help them make decisions in their life, you want to know who they are, how they make decisions, why they think the way they do, how they're brought up, and why they're making the certain decisions they want to make. And, some people make decisions based purely on money because they might come from a rough upbringing and they're desperate to make as much money in a short period of time because they've had a really rough life. Other people might just want to make money to make money. But some people just want to be the best athlete they can be and they'll take a pay cut for that. Or they just want to enjoy their sport. So I think it's really important to understand the person. And I don't think anyone is ever going to understand the person or want to spend time with the person that they don't get along with.
Right.
And I think there's just and the synergies between that are really important. I think, every value doesn't have to match up. But I think the people that, you've got to have some values that match up and you've got to have some common ground in what you're doing, or some understanding across both parties. Because I think at the end of the day, I just want to get the best out of the athlete for the athlete's sake. I'm not going, into a meeting and going, okay, I'm going to put this forward and then go, oh, hey, I make that management fee out of it. I've never thought that way and never will.
Yeah.
And I think if I do start to think that way, I'd give the discipline up because I think that that's a negligent aspect towards the client that when you're thinking about your outcome. But yeah, I guess the whole infancy of, different sports across it, it's important to have some values aligned with what you're doing with that individual and how they're doing it. I think if, you vet people pretty quickly and you can meet with them pretty quickly and understand what they want out of the agency, if you manage the big dogs, I managed a girl and she was completely, the opposite way to what I was trying to achieve as a business, and we parted ways on that proviso because I just couldn't do it anymore. I didn't want to represent a client that completely went against every aspect of what I was trying to do and achieve. And I think that's really big for me. You can sit back and take the money as an agent, but for me, it's values aligned. We're heading in the right direction. We're doing it together, and as a combined unit, the clients that I manage and are fortunate to be part of their journeys. It's a really headstrong. It's really, progressive in terms of what we're trying to do and achieve. It's bigger than sport, really.
Yeah.
And it's going to, change young girls' lives that are coming through at the moment.
One thing you speak of actually, just when I was sort of looking through more the management and some of the players that you had, one thing you emphasised quite a lot of what you guys do for the girls is around brand management. And I think that ties into a little bit of what you were touching on around the people aspect and stuff. But what does that actually mean, I guess, for you as a manager when you're thinking of how we manage these girls' brands?
Yeah, I think it's, you do a lot of discovery into what they want to be known as and what they want the public to see. If I manage someone that's vegan and vegetarian, why would I put them with McDonald's, for instance? Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of managers that do that and have done that. And I think, as a manager, I'm not only managing the talent, but I'm creating relationships with brands. And if that brand doesn't trust me and what I'm putting forward, I'm actually jeopardizing the next opportunity for the next client that comes along. So in terms of being able to put forward the right talent, and the question before is why do you need to know the talent and all of that? You need to know the person to be able to put them forward for different opportunities in how they'll cope under pressure and how they'll act and how they'll execute the job. So I think that brand management, type thing, and it's quite loose because I think your brand evolves over time. Maddie Press-Parkhurst comes into the league as, the Carlton's first pick, and then she wins every best and fairest, and then she wins a Brownlow, and everyone's like, oh, she should be poster girl for everything. I'm like, whoa, chill, she's so young. Because if you put her everywhere, she's going to feel pressure externally her entire career, and it's let the kid play.
Yeah.
Ellie McKenzie this year, pick one of last year's draft, and you speak to the club and you go, just let her play the first year, just back off her and let her play. And she's won best first year player and she came second in the best and fairest the other night.
Got just all the number one draft picks.
No.
You just reeled off the first 3 seasons. Yeah,
No, but just that kind of thing. You can't create I think athletes get really torn up in creating a brand, and it's you need to be a good athlete before you have a brand.
100%, yeah.
And you need to let the crowd.
That should be the brand, shouldn't
correct,
it?
and it is, and that's what I try to emphasise a fair bit. I'm fortunate to manage a lot of different players, but I emphasise that you've got to keep being the great athlete that you are, and speak volumes. Your actions on the field are going to speak much more, and they're going to be a lot stronger if you're trying to create a message off field.
Yeah. So for you, do you see an influx? Obviously, you have visibility at all, but the influx of opportunities now coming into this space for the girls. Is it growing phenomenally? Is it still sort of tailored to the top end sort of cattle, or how does that sort of...
The opportunities probably, I think, notoriously do get tailored to the top end, but I think I'm fortunate to probably manage a lot of that top end.
Exactly.
Not a lot of it, but, what I think the best talent in the country is. And then, if that opportunity isn't right for a Taylor Harris, then I've got the likes of Maddie Press-Barker, Sally McKenzie. I've got, the Hosking twins that are coming through that we're trying to build their brands that I can actually vet that opportunity too if it's the right opportunity. So I think that notoriously the correspondence comes in the door for the big girls, but they might conflict with the current sponsor or, they don't have enough cash to get there for that, for Taylor, Katie, Darcy, etc.
Yeah.
So you actually open up opportunities for other girls and you're able to pitch other girls forward for those opportunities, which I think is really important, to have a really holistic list of girls that are at the top of their game, but then the girls that are coming through as well, through the ranks to be able to, say, hey, Taylor might not be right for this opportunity because she has a current conflict with Nike.
Right.
But, the Hosking twins are, and telling their story and whatnot to pitch them in is something that not a lot of agents do. And we're notorious for, banging down the AFL's door for new brand partnerships and everything, but, pitching for them for a reason.
Okay.
And that's important.
So actually, one of the things I did want to mention that kick Taylor Harris did obviously caught headline news, and your phone must have just been blowing up with opportunities. I can imagine that must have been a crazy time for you.
Oh yeah, that was quite nuts. I didn't have a lot of sleep, that's for sure. I think the phone calls were always like to tell her, it's all good. I've got it all sorted. Nah, you go to sleep. It's all good. We'll chat in the morning. We get coffee, and I was just up all night. And she just laughs about that now. It's making sure you protect the client, protecting Taylor in that, and I was really big on that. There was a lot of people in her saying, you need to do this, and no, Tate, you need to just go play a good football game. And it's as simple as that. And then the messaging out of that, we want to educate, we want to inspire, and we want to create a safe place for people to share their stories about being trolled. And that was the biggest thing. We want to educate the public through it. It wasn't going, let's do as much media in a short space of time and become as famous as we can. That was never the driving force behind it. And, we've been speaking to government for the past year and a half, 2 years, to be able to get Taylor to go and do something really meaningful within, primary schools and secondary schools. And that's only just starting to come to fruition now. There's an element of patience within it too. And, when you're in Taylor's bubble and understanding that, there's a lot of people that don't get that and go, no, you need to do everything right now and right this second. It's like, Tay, you need to just chill. And she's really good at listening and she's really loyal. So her ability to listen and trust her team. So like in terms of boxing, she really trusts her boxing coach and her promoter that books all her fights. And at a football level, she trusts her club, and then she trusts me to do her management. That's amazing. It's great that she's got that trust and that security there, because else she's just listening to too many people. But I think, we managed that quite well. We did, all the PR in the best interest of her and made sure the messaging was, continually the same. And then we brought a book out, 6 months later because it was the educational part of that. And really sticking to our guns. There was a lot of people that said, well, let's come do a biography of her. I'm like, she's 21 years old. We're not doing a bloody biography. She played 3 years of football.
Yeah.
No.
Crazy.
That's coming at the back end of her career.
That's amazing though that stuff's there though. Like that's coming. Like it's what a big shift.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that saw her talent and saw the raw athleticism. Like we signed a 4-year deal with Nike before that kick, and her markability before that is, but after that kick is huge, so much more before that. So, Nike, who have been loyal from the start, have been great to deal with and, great to be brand partners with across that period of time. So they've given her ample opportunity being part of, international TVCs with Serena Williams and Sam Kerr. And so, the opportunities people have got because they've come in early. Like I'm very big at rewarding brands because of that, because you're loyal when they don't have the brand though. You're loyal when they, they haven't got 100,000 followers. So I'm very big on that and getting girls to stay educated around the fact that these people were here from the beginning. They aren't coming now just because they see a product to be able to sell through you right now. Be loyal to the people that have been great to you at the start of your career.
Yeah, that's really well put. It's like you always have the big picture in mind of what you want for your clients. I mean, in regards to when you're expanding into some of these other sports, because you obviously are watching other sports quite closely because it is a big part of your business, but how much do you really need to know about the sport to be able to manage these players, to be able to go into that field? You don't really need to be an expert? I mean, what's your sort of view on that? Because
I think you do need to understand the sport to some degree because, if I was to send one of my players that played soccer from here to Switzerland to go play and they didn't play a game and they wasted 8 months of their life not playing, it's negligent to their football, soccer. Going forward. So I think you need to know the game and you need to know that they will play every game or play great minutes to increase their ability as an athlete. Absolutely. I don't think you need to know the exact ins and outs. I don't think you need to be an ex-player to really do that. I think you need to have some understanding of being an athlete to be able to, comprehensively be able to, support and understand. But, netball and AFLW league, and we've just gone into thoroughbred racing with jockeys at the moment, and understanding all of that. That it is important to know sport and know the ins and outs, and the consequences when you don't have a good game or whatnot. But just understanding your talent and what they want is nearly more important than watching the sport itself.
So did you say you're managing jockeys as well?
Yeah, we've just signed 3 female jockeys.
Wow, that's incredible. So you've got some of the best AFLW players to some budding Matildas and W League players to jockeys now on. I mean, that's pretty incredible when you talk about the 3-year journey of like the wide
and Aussie Diamonds. We've got Emily Mannix. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I'm really proud of what we've been able to establish.
Incredible.
My dad has been involved in horse racing his whole life, so I think that's where the evolution of that network came from.
Yeah.
But the jockey space is super interesting. We're trying to change the image of them being elite athletes, because they are. They train bloody hard and they do everything they can to make weight and then race really well.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and they put their body on the line every time they get on the back of a horse. So just being up for a challenge in a different area and providing a different service for what they don't have. Like, at the end of the day, they're their own brand. They're their own, club in itself. They don't get strength and conditioning, dietetics. They don't get media support. They get nothing. They've got to do it all themselves. So we've created like a bit of a service to be able to help them with that. So yeah, I guess it's, really cool to be able to span across different sports, but you've got to have an interest or an understanding or, at least a network in that space. And my network in, AFLW is probably the best out of all 5 sports, but the ability to create the network in racing from my connections through family is there, and then soccer through my mentors is there, and then through netball through my mentors is there too. So NRL is something that we're looking in, and I had a great meeting with Peter Volandis not long ago, who's chairman of the NRL, and his advice and his support, and that just comes from great relationships across the board. That's
fantastic. So there's a huge part of what you do must just be networking and maintaining relationships, like the people aspect. That must be the fun part in some regards for you.
Yeah, and that's probably what attracted me to the job in the beginning, just after year 12. That I love networking and I love understanding the network. Like the school I went to, when I, managed the rowing program, I got a buzz out of, educating kids to row out from year 8 to year 9. But awesome. I got a buzz from learning the parents, what they did and, their relationship and what happened there and the families I got to meet. So I just love networking. I love understanding people's stories, people's journeys, and yeah, it's been great to be a part of.
So from a growth perspective across female sport, I mean, are there any leagues across the world or specifically any industries across the world outside of Australia that you think are doing really well from like where female sport is at? I mean, like from particularly like the WNBA is just an example I have in my mind of like the respect and credibility that has in America. And the broadcast of what it gets, in comparison to the men is actually probably really good. I mean, it can always grow, but there's a huge following and reason for following. I mean, do you sort of see that translating to what we can get to sport in this country at some point?
Yeah, I think it's challenging because Australia is so small compared to America. But when you talk about percentages of all of that, I think that, I think we can definitely get there. I think, we've got to create cult-like followings like, the European League have with their soccer and whatnot. Like, I think, Chelsea and, Manchester United with their female team are doing really, really great things. And the soccer league in America, I just think even female, golf and female tennis, and we're really showing things on the big stage of why females are important to have as role models for kids. And it's the same for men. It's important for men, the boys to have great role models in the men's space too. But I think that, we're only just starting our journey in female sport. And, in the next 10 years, we'll look back and go, $15,000 contract. How did I ever play for that? Or how did I ever manage that? So I think that, we're just in the infancy of what's ahead, and I think what's ahead is quite big.
There's always the topic around like equal pay, and it's like people always discuss, when or how or what the opportunities. I mean, do you see that getting to a point with female sport in this country? Like,
well, our best female teams, are the Matildas and the women's cricket team.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't speak volumes enough, there's equal pay in those things because the men's benefit from it.
Correct.
And, in any other sport, the men are really protective of their salary. And it's like, wait a minute, the Matildas are the best, soccer team we've got in the country, and then the 100%. Women's cricket are better than the men's. And it's like, well, they're sharing their salary because the men are like, yeah, we'll jump on board because they benefit from it. But in AFL at the moment, the women would benefit from, being part of the men's CBA, but the men are so protective of $2,000 or $3,000 each contract that they aren't willing to look at the bigger picture and look at how incredible that could be for sport long term.
Do you reckon that's going to open up? I mean, that's going to shift? I mean, I know CBAs are an absolute
Yeah, I hope it does. And I think it's, a big part that I'm going to help supporting the girls a lot more and be a bit more of an advocate in that space to help, create better structures for the girls to have those discussions about CBA and educating the girls a little bit more on how they should go about it. Because they're so passionate to, get the right, CBA for the girls. But 50 to 60% of the league wouldn't even understand what those girls do and the amount of meetings they have and conversations they have to make, pay scales better for them. And they just go, oh, tick the box. I just want to play. I just want the jersey. I just want the apparel. And it's a lot bigger than that now. And you got to do it now. If you don't do it now, it's going to be really hard to, do it any other time.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really pushing. I think we're starting to see a shift, but definitely getting the same standardization as males, particularly, obviously coming from the soccer background, the discussions around females in the sport and the W League and sort of having that equal pay, that was going on back when I was playing, which was 4 or 5 years ago. So there was obviously, we were maybe a bit ahead of the curve there, but you look at the Matildas now and what they do on the field, it's incredible. They're so good. They're so good.
And it's just like saying that, it's an international game. I get that. And there's, greater presence overseas, but we're seeing the Matildas now go to Europe because the W League's failing them. Yeah. So, we're going to keep losing our best athletes overseas because, they provide better pay, they provide better commercial opportunities, and they provide a better playing environment for those players.
Yeah. Okay, well, for those, I guess, that have had a bit of insight into more the management and how you think about, where do you plan on taking this journey? Where do you see it going?
I think my plans from year 1 to year 2 change and year 2 to year 3 change. So I think that I've got, an understanding of where I want to take it and how I want to be, invested in women's sport. But I don't want to put time brackets on things because if I do, things really change really rapidly. Equal pay for Matildas came in year 2 and I was like, I should jump. And I didn't want to jump in then because it just would have looked like I was after the equal pay. I want to do it at the right periods of time. But, as I said at the start, my dream is to be the best manager in the country, let alone the world, for female talent. And, I'm really committed to that, but doing it in the right way that isn't derived by the bottom line of profit. I want to be the best person for the job. And that, again, I don't want to have my business dictated by profits or losses or anything like that. It's how do I be the best person for that? And, that's educating myself along the way to stay up to date with everything, but taking opportunities when they come. And making sure, in the cricket space, I haven't sent out 25 letters to girls because I just need a good list of cricketers right now. It's, I'm really selective with who I want to manage. And I spoke to a cricketer not long ago and they're like, oh, yeah, I know this player, and that player that you manage. Starting to be a bit more well known for how well we look after our talent is something that, is going to take not a long time, but the right amount of time to, make sure we get the right talent. I'm not in the mindset, as I said, to just manage everyone. I want to manage the right people that align with the business and what we do moving forward. And, the sky's the limit for me with any sport.
Man, I think that's absolutely awesome what you're doing. You're a pioneer in this space, as we've touched on. You're looking to expand into other sports. Incredible, really, what you're doing. And I really hope to see this sort of evolve for you in the way that you plan, and we'll definitely keep supporting you. And obviously the AFLW, we love watching and are massive fans of, and as the season wraps up, we'll probably wrap this one up too, but just wanted to thank you so much for coming in, Alex. It's
no
been
worries.
An absolute joy.
Thanks, Jake. I appreciate having me on.
No worries. Pleasure. Cheers.
Cheers.